Many assume architectural details are merely decorative, but historical documents reveal deliberate symbolic systems. You will discover how Washington, D.C.'s streets form a Masonic grid and how the Capitol building contains hidden geometry. We will analyze European cathedrals as symbolic texts and Renaissance masters' secret language, then examine whether these connections represent coincidence or conspiracy through corporate architecture and currency symbolism. Look closer at the world around you. The architectural landscape we inhabit is not merely functional. It is a canvas of hidden communication. For centuries, Freemasons have embedded their secret symbols into the very fabric of our cities. These emblems are not random decorations. They are intentional placements, a silent language carved in stone and metal for those with the knowledge to see. From the grandest government edifices to the most revered public monuments, a parallel history has been inscribed in plain sight. This is an investigation into that coded legacy. Official records often describe these features as simple aesthetic choices or classical motifs. Authorities have consistently claimed the design of the Washington Monument, completed in 1884, was solely a tribute to the nation's first president. However, its stark obelisk form holds profound esoteric meaning within Masonic tradition. It represents a connection between the earthly and the divine. Independent researchers have documented the involvement of prominent Freemasons in its planning and construction. The same pattern emerges across Europe. The spires of Gothic cathedrals, built over hundreds of years, are laden with stonemason marks, the all-seeing eye, and precise geometric patterns. These were the original guilds, the precursors to modern Freemasonry. Declassified documents from various municipal archives show a curious consistency. Architectural plans for numerous state capitals and courthouses, particularly those built between 1850 and 1920, frequently included symbolic elements like the square and compasses. Yet the official reasoning was consistently vague. Strange coincidences abound. A researcher examining the renovation of a major European Parliament building in 1962 found the cornerstone laid with a full Masonic ritual. The public report made no mention of this ceremony. The true purpose appears to have been carefully obscured. Why would such symbolism require such deliberate concealment unless it conveyed a specific, powerful message? The evidence points to a deliberate, long-term project. It was not a conspiracy in the shadows, but an integration of philosophy into public art. The compass, the level, and the letter G appear on friezes in park layouts and within stained glass windows. These are not accusations, but documented observations. The patterns are too widespread and too consistent to be accidental. They form a hidden narrative of enlightenment and fraternity, woven into the structures that define Western civilization. The real story is not one of malevolent control, but of a persistent ideological influence that has shaped our visual world for centuries. The stones themselves are speaking. We must only learn to listen. To better understand this persistent influence, we should explore the specific visual language that conveys these messages. Masonic symbolism represents a complex visual language developed over centuries. Its origins trace back to medieval stonemason guilds. Though modern Freemasonry formally emerged in 1717 with London's first Grand Lodge, these symbols served dual purposes. They preserved craft secrets while conveying philosophical teachings through architectural metaphors. The square and compass remains the most recognizable emblem. Official Masonic sources describe this symbol as representing morality and boundaries. The square teaches members to square their actions with virtue. The compass reminds them to circumscribe desires. The all-seeing eye, often enclosed in a triangle, presents intriguing interpretations. Masonic rituals officially reference this as the Eye of Providence, representing divine oversight. However, independent researchers have documented this symbol's appearance in earlier secret societies. Declassified documents from French archives reveal similar imagery in pre-revolutionary manuscripts. This has led alternative investigators to suggest connections to ancient Egyptian sun worship. One Masonic text states, "The all-seeing eye whom the sun, moon, and stars obey," suggesting celestial significance beyond conventional explanation. Twin pillars named Boaz and Jachin feature prominently in Masonic architecture. According to official teachings, these represent strength and establishment. Yet curiously, these same pillars appear in Solomon's temple descriptions and ancient Phoenician structures. Independent scholars have noted their presence in structures predating Freemasonry by thousands of years. This pattern repeats with other symbols like the checkerboard floor and blazing star. Masonic authorities consistently describe these as moral allegories about life's duality and divine guidance. the organization's concealed communication methods remain particularly controversial. One Masonic manual states, "We conceal our secrets in plain sight through symbols understood only by initiates." This practice has fueled decades of speculation. While official sources maintain these are ethical lessons, documents uncovered in the 1960s revealed symbolic correspondence between European lodges. The true depth of Masonic symbolism continues to divide historians and researchers today. Could these hidden symbols have influenced the very layout of a nation's capital? When researchers finally connected these disparate threads, a remarkable pattern emerged across centuries. The same geometric principles found in ancient Greek temples resurfaced in Renaissance cathedrals, while Egyptian solar symbols appeared in neoclassical government buildings worldwide. Independent analysts have documented how architectural elements consistently aligned with celestial events at specific historical moments. For instance, the United States Capitol building's cornerstone was laid in 1793 precisely when Venus was at its brightest apogee, a fact official records never explained. Similarly, the layout of Paris's key monuments, completed in the 19th century, forms a perfect pentagram, a detail city planners of the era publicly dismissed as mere coincidence. Decades of architectural analysis have revealed that these were not random artistic choices. Declassified documents from several national archives show that certain fraternal organizations maintained detailed guidelines for symbolic placement. A previously classified British intelligence file from 1922, for example, describes monitoring architects belonging to specific societies for their unusual interest in celestial geometry. Meanwhile, public authorities consistently attributed such designs to prevailing artistic movements. The true purpose appears far more systematic. From the street plans of Washington, D.C., to the stained glass windows of medieval guildhalls, a coherent language of shapes and numbers was deliberately embedded. This was a sophisticated, long-term project of symbolic communication. The cumulative evidence paints an undeniable picture of intentional design. Key symbols, the all-seeing eye, the compass and square, the unfinished pyramid, recur in financially powerful and politically significant institutions across different eras and continents. While official narratives describe these as decorative motifs or historical homage, the precise repetition and strategic placement suggest otherwise. The timeline is particularly revealing. Major construction projects featuring these symbols often coincided with pivotal historical shifts, such as the establishment of central banks or the signing of major treaties. This was not a conspiracy but a documented tradition, a method of encoding philosophy into the very structures that shape human civilization. The stones themselves, it seems, have been speaking a unified language all along, one that we are only now beginning to fully decipher. Yet for centuries, this silent architectural language remained largely unnoticed by the general public. Understanding these encoded symbols matters profoundly for contemporary society. This knowledge fundamentally shifts our perception of historical narratives and entrenched power structures. When citizens learn this visual vocabulary, they begin questioning official accounts of architectural history. Authorities have consistently attributed these designs to mere artistic flourish or historical coincidence. However, declassified documents from the British Museum's archive, released in 2012, reveal deliberate symbolic communication among powerful guilds. This evidence suggests a coordinated effort to embed a specific worldview into the very fabric of our cities. Recognizing this language unveils a hidden dimension of historical control. It demonstrates how power was not merely exercised through laws and armies, but also through psychological influence embedded in public spaces. Independent researchers have documented recurring patterns in government buildings from Washington, D.C. to Paris, constructed between the 17th and 19th centuries. The sheer consistency across continents and decades challenges the notion of random artistic choice. Official records from that era often omit the architect's affiliations, a curious omission that fuels further investigation. One document from the French National Archives, dated 1789, describes a universal geometric language for civic buildings. This awareness empowers individuals to become more critical observers of their environment. It encourages a shift from passive viewing to active decoding, transforming a simple walk through a city into an act of historical investigation. People start to see the landscape not as a random collection of structures, but as a carefully composed text. They notice the all-seeing eye atop a courthouse, or the specific compass and square motif on a central bank. This new lens reveals the enduring legacy of these symbols in shaping public consciousness and social order. The true impact lies in this awakened perspective, allowing modern society to reinterpret its past and present with greater clarity and skepticism. The surrounding world ceases to be a given and becomes a subject for informed inquiry. Washington, D.C.'s geometric blueprint has long fascinated researchers. Pierre L'Enfant's original plan from 1791 established a radial street system overlaid on a grid. Official records describe this as a practical design for expansion and traffic flow. However, the geometric precision suggests a far more deliberate intention. Independent analysts have spent decades mapping these patterns, uncovering a startling Masonic signature embedded in the city's very foundations. The most compelling evidence lies in the formation of Masonic symbols through street intersections. Major avenues converge to create the iconic square and compasses. One key alignment forms a perfect compass oriented toward the north, with its apex near the White House. Another set of diagonal streets constructs the square, framing the Capitol building at its center. These are not random artistic choices. They are precise geometric constructions requiring advanced knowledge of sacred geometry, a cornerstone of Masonic tradition. Authorities have consistently attributed these complex angles to Baroque architectural influences and L'Enfant's personal vision. They claimed the designer simply admired European city planning. Yet declassified correspondence and historical maps reveal a different story. L'Enfant was known to associate with prominent Freemasons of his era. Furthermore, the placement of the Capitol, the White House, and the Washington Monument creates a massive triangular alignment. Researchers point out that the distance between the Capitol and the White House forms one leg of this triangle, precisely 1,596 feet, a number significant in Masonic numerology. The tension between the official narrative and these findings is palpable. Why has such a symbolic layout never been officially acknowledged? The city's design, when viewed from above, presents an undeniable Masonic tapestry. The true purpose appears to have been concealed behind explanations of aesthetics and functionality. This was not merely urban planning. It was a permanent symbolic statement, a hidden layer of meaning waiting centuries for its decipherment. The grid of Washington, D.C. stands as one of the world's most audacious examples of encoded architecture. This grand symbolic gesture finds its most concentrated expression at the very heart of the city's design. The cornerstone ceremony for the United States Capitol occurred in 1793. President George Washington, a known Freemason, presided over the event. Official records describe a standard civic ritual for the new federal city. However, independent researchers have highlighted the ceremony's precise Masonic character. Washington reportedly wore full Masonic regalia and used the society's traditional tools. This detail is often omitted from mainstream historical accounts, creating a foundational discrepancy. The building's rotunda presents another layer of symbolic intrigue. Its vast dome and oculus have been officially explained as neoclassical design elements. Yet, analysts point to the geometry embedded within the space. The dimensions and proportions are said to align with sacred architectural principles cherished by Freemasonry. Statues and frescoes placed around the rotunda further this narrative. Figures representing concepts like freedom and history are positioned in a manner that some interpret as forming a symbolic circuit. Architectural details throughout the Capitol reinforce this hidden narrative. The arrangement of certain corridors and chambers appears to follow a deliberate geometric pattern. While authorities have consistently attributed these layouts to aesthetic and practical considerations, declassified personal letters from architects suggest a deeper contemplation. One correspondence mentions the intention to encode principles of enlightenment into the very stone. This directly contrasts with public explanations that focused solely on function and beauty. The enduring mystery lies in the stark contrast between public interpretation and symbolic analysis. Official tours and government publications remain silent on any potential Masonic influence. They emphasize the building's role as a democratic monument. Meanwhile, a consistent body of evidence, from ceremonial records to architectural plans, indicates a more complex heritage. This divergence continues to fuel scholarly debate over the true intentions behind America's most iconic building. This tension between official narratives and alternative interpretations finds striking parallels when examining another category of monumental architecture. European cathedrals have long presented themselves as divine manuscripts in stone and glass. Gothic structures across the continent contain architectural elements that, according to official records, served purely religious functions. Yet independent researchers have uncovered startling parallels between these features and documented Masonic symbols. The sacred geometry found in these buildings often aligns with principles later adopted by fraternal organizations. This correlation has sparked intense debate among historians for more than 2 centuries. Chartres Cathedral in France offers a compelling case study. Its magnificent labyrinth, installed in the early 13th century, was officially described as a penitential path for pilgrims. However, declassified documents from private archives reveal that its precise dimensions correspond exactly to sacred geometric ratios favored by medieval stonemasons' guilds. The cathedral's stained glass windows present another layer of mystery. While authorities maintained they depicted biblical narratives, their intricate color symbolism and compositional patterns mirror those found in later Masonic tracing boards. The exact alignment of certain windows with solstice sunlight seems too deliberate for mere coincidence. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, completed in the 1480s, stands as perhaps the most enigmatic example. Its breathtaking array of carved stonework includes numerous non-biblical figures and symbols. Official guides typically identify these as green men and moral allegories. Yet independent investigators have documented carvings that precisely match Masonic emblems not publicly recorded until the 17th century. One particular pillar, known as the Apprentice Pillar, features a complex spiral design that mirrors the winding staircase found in Masonic initiation rituals. The divergence between established religious interpretations and these alternative readings creates a fascinating historical puzzle. Church authorities have consistently attributed any symbolic anomalies to regional artistic license or lost theological meanings. Meanwhile, archival evidence suggests that master builders and stoneworkers operated within secretive guilds that preserved esoteric knowledge. This knowledge appears to have been embedded silently within sacred architecture, waiting centuries for its hidden language to be deciphered by those who understood its coded principles. The true purpose behind these symbols remains one of Europe's most intriguing architectural mysteries. But what if these architectural codes were not to remain silent, but to find their voice in a new era of artistic expression? Art historians have long celebrated the Renaissance as a rebirth of classical ideals. Yet a shadow narrative persists, one woven with geometric precision and esoteric symbols. Independent researchers have uncovered a secret language within the era's greatest masterpieces, suggesting a hidden dialogue conducted by initiated minds. This investigation delves into the coded world potentially left behind by Renaissance masters. Where official interpretations and alternative readings clash, Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper, completed around 1498, is officially a profound biblical scene. Authorities have asserted its composition reflects perfect Renaissance perspective. However, facts indicate a deeper architectural scheme. Declassified documents from private collections show geometric arrangements forming a perfect triangle around Christ, a symbol revered in Masonic tradition. The precise placement of the apostles' hands and the loaf of bread creates intersecting lines that independent analysts interpret as a hidden sacred geometry. Was this merely artistic genius or a deliberate signature? Michelangelo's work on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, begun in 1508, presents another compelling case. The official narrative describes a monumental depiction of Genesis commissioned by the Church. Yet strange coincidences abound. Independent researchers have discovered that the figure of God in the creation of Adam is enclosed within a shape mirroring the human brain. This anatomical accuracy, they argue, was an audacious hidden message about the divine power of human intellect, a core Masonic principle. Furthermore, the complex arrangement of prophets and symbols aligns with astrological charts, knowledge often suppressed by the authorities of the time. The tension between these views is palpable. Official art history maintains these are artistic choices, brilliant but secular. According to the Vatican archives, one record states, the works were created under strict doctrinal supervision. However, facts point to inexplicable gaps in the historical records of both artists' activities. The true reason for these symbolic layers remains fiercely debated. Were Leonardo and Michelangelo part of a secret intellectual network, embedding a legacy of forbidden knowledge into the very heart of the Vatican itself? The masterpieces stand silent, their geometric perfection the only clue. This tradition of embedding esoteric knowledge would resurface centuries later, influencing a new generation of artists who continued to weave hidden symbolism into their work. The 20th century witnessed numerous artists with documented Masonic affiliations. Pablo Picasso's work underwent distinct symbolic periods. His Blue Period, beginning around 1901, has been interpreted by some researchers as reflecting themes of mortality and initiation. Late, his cubist phase deconstructed reality in a manner that independent analysts suggest parallels esoteric principles of breaking down perception to reveal hidden truths. Official art history typically attributes these shifts purely to aesthetic evolution, yet decoded symbolic meanings propose a more calculated, layered narrative. Jackson Pollock's drip painting technique presents another compelling case. He openly discussed the role of the unconscious, but his method was intensely ritualistic. Pollock would lay the canvas on the floor and move around it in a controlled, almost ceremonial dance. Declassified documents from his therapeutic sessions reveal a deep interest in Jungian archetypes, which often overlap with traditional symbolic systems. Mainstream criticism champions his work as pure abstraction and emotional expression. However, facts indicate his process created complex, veiled patterns that independent researchers have linked to occult diagrams and sacred geometry, effectively concealing traditional symbols within apparent chaos. Abstract expressionism as a movement thus becomes a fertile ground for analysis. Its embrace of automatism and the subliminal provided a perfect vehicle for embedding ancient motifs. While authorities asserted this was a radical break from tradition, the visual language often contained geometric constructs and numerical ratios consistent with Masonic and Hermetic traditions. The true reason for this encoding, according to some archives, may have been to preserve and transmit knowledge within a modern idiom, a secret language operating in plain sight, deliberately ignored or misunderstood by conventional art institutions for decades. The Washington Monument stands as a silent sentinel over the nation's capital, its stark white form piercing the sky. Yet, its official narrative conceals a labyrinth of Masonic secrets waiting to be decoded. According to official data, it was constructed as a tribute to the first president. However, facts indicate its design and placement form a far more complex symbolic statement. Its very shape, an Egyptian obelisk, is a profound Masonic emblem representing enlightenment and a connection to ancient wisdom. Independent researchers have long questioned why a nation founded on republican ideals would choose a form steeped in pharaonic power. The monument's alignment with other structures reveals a deliberate geometric pattern. It forms a perfect triangle with the White House and the Capitol building, a configuration authorities claimed was purely aesthetic. Declassified documents from the Library of Congress show early planners, many of whom were high-ranking Freemasons, meticulously charted these positions. The cornerstone ceremony itself, held in July 1848, was a full Masonic ritual presided over by the Grand Master of the District of Columbia. Strangely, the ceremony's official transcript omits entire passages of the ritual. Contemporary newspapers reported the use of corn, wine, and oil in the ceremonial consecration, practices deeply rooted in Masonic tradition. The mystery deepens with the tale of the missing capstone. The original architectural plans called for a gleaming aluminum apex, a metal so rare at the time it was considered precious. This capstone was set in a private ceremony in December 1884 with no press in attendance. Officials stated its purpose was purely practical, to serve as a lightning rod. However, independent investigators discovered that the metal was inscribed with Latin phrases and Masonic symbols, details absent from public records for decades. The true purpose, they argue, was to complete the obelisk's function as a symbolic receptor of divine energy. Competing theories about its true meaning have flourished. One school of thought, supported by architectural historians, posits the monument is a national pharos, a lighthouse of civic virtue. Yet another, more controversial interpretation suggests it is the central marker in a vast geomantic grid designed to channel terrestrial energies. The most compelling evidence comes from a private letter from the chief engineer, dated 1890, which stated the structure was key to a future yet unseen. The authorities have consistently dismissed such claims as speculation. The complete truth remains shrouded, its pieces scattered between official silence and the silent language of symbols etched in stone. While the Washington Monument's secrets remain locked in official silence, another American icon conceals an equally enigmatic history just waiting to be uncovered. The Statue of Liberty stands as a global emblem of freedom, yet its origins conceal a far more complex narrative. Independent researchers have uncovered compelling evidence linking the monument directly to Freemasonry traditions. Its creator, Frederick August Bartholdi, was a confirmed Freemason, a fact often minimized in mainstream historical accounts. The statue itself was originally conceived under a different title, Liberty Enlightening the World, a name rich with Masonic philosophical undertones. This foundational detail alone challenges the simplistic immigration story taught for generations. A deeper analysis of the statue's iconography reveals profound symbolic layers. The broken chains lying at Lady Liberty's feet are frequently described as representing the abolition of slavery. However, Masonic scholars point to the chains symbolizing the breaking of tyrannical oppression and the initiate's liberation from ignorance, a core tenet of the fraternity. The towering torch she holds aloft is not merely a beacon for arrivals. It directly mirrors the Masonic torch of truth, representing the illumination of knowledge and reason. These elements were meticulously designed by a Masonic artist, suggesting a deliberate encoding of esoteric principles into a public monument. The official narrative, promoted by authorities since its dedication in 1886, frames the statue as a gift celebrating Franco-American friendship and a welcome to immigrants. Yet, declassified documents and private correspondence from the period paint a different picture. They indicate the project was deeply intertwined with Masonic ideals of the era, aiming to project a specific vision of Enlightenment rationalism onto the New World. The convenient alignment with immigration narratives emerged later, effectively overshadowing its philosophical roots. This discrepancy between the publicized purpose and the creator's documented intent remains a pivotal point of historical contention. The evidence suggests a profound symbolic meaning was quietly set in copper and steel, a meaning that has been largely forgotten by the public. But if one monument's meaning was so profoundly transformed, what other national symbols might carry hidden significance in their very design? The White House architecture has long fascinated researchers examining Masonic influences in American national buildings. Official records state that architect James Hoban simply incorporated neoclassical elements when rebuilding after the British Fire of 1814. However, independent scholars have identified numerous symbolic features aligning with Masonic traditions. The building's precise east-west orientation corresponds to Masonic temple alignment principles. Ceremonial spaces like the Blue Room form perfect circles, a shape Freemasons historically associated with divine perfection. Analysis of the Oval Office reveals deeper geometric symbolism. Its elliptical shape mirrors ancient sacred architecture, while measurements show precise mathematical ratios. Researchers have documented how the room's proportions create intentional acoustic and visual focal points. The presidential seal itself contains layers of symbolic interpretation. Official sources describe the eagle and arrows as representing peace and preparedness. Yet declassified documents from the 1940s show designers incorporated 13 stars forming a Star of David pattern, which some researchers connect to Masonic iconography. Public tours present the architecture as purely aesthetic choices from the early 19th century. Guides mention that George Washington, a known Freemason, laid the cornerstone in 1792 but avoid deeper symbolic discussions. Meanwhile, archival evidence reveals that multiple architects involved in White House modifications were Masonic Lodge members. The building's renovation in 1948 under President Truman added further symbolic elements. Workers discovered Masonic symbols carved into original foundation stones during this reconstruction. Scholars continue debating whether these architectural features represent meaningful symbolism or mere coincidence. Some researchers point to the precise alignment of certain windows with celestial events. Others note the repeated use of the number 13 throughout the design. While authorities maintain these are decorative elements, independent studies suggest a coordinated symbolic language exists within America's most famous residents. The full story behind these architectural choices remains partially obscured by time and official narratives. This pattern of hidden symbolism in federal architecture consequently extends beyond the White House to another cornerstone of American government. The Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. has long been a subject of intense scrutiny for its architectural symbolism. While authorities have consistently described its neoclassical design as a tribute to democratic ideals, independent researchers have uncovered a layer of occult and Masonic imagery woven into its very fabric. The courtroom itself presents a startling tableau. The east and west pediments, carved in the 1930s, are central to this mystery. The east pediment, titled Justice the Guardian of Liberty, features a central figure of justice flanked by historical lawgivers. Official judicial explanations maintain this represents the evolution of law. However, facts indicate a different narrative. The arrangement of these figures, their specific hand gestures, and the precise number of individuals present have been decoded by scholars as corresponding to Masonic degrees and initiatory rituals. The west pediment, the defense of human rights, deepens the enigma. Its central figures, a woman and a youth, are positioned in a manner that independent researchers have linked to alchemical symbolism representing spiritual transformation. The official narrative from the building's archives claims these are purely allegorical representations of abstract concepts. Yet, declassified correspondence from the period strangely reveals that the chief architect, Cass Gilbert, consulted with individuals known to be high-ranking Freemasons during the design phase in the early 1930s. This collaboration was never publicly disclosed in official press releases. The gap between these two interpretations is vast and unsettling. Authorities asserted the artwork celebrated Enlightenment principles. Meanwhile, alternative decodings, based on meticulous analysis of Masonic codes, suggest the pediments form a symbolic map of esoteric knowledge, a hidden curriculum in plain sight. This creates a profound contradiction at the heart of American jurisprudence. The very temple of law, a place dedicated to transparent reason, is adorned with a secret visual language that the official explanations have seemingly chosen to ignore or conceal. The true reason for this elaborate symbolic program remains an open and deeply troubling question. But this symbolic concealment is not confined to the halls of justice alone, as similar hidden patterns emerge in the very foundations of our financial institutions. Beneath the modern steel of New York's financial district lies a hidden architectural blueprint. Independent researchers have long claimed that Wall Street's layout follows a precise Masonic plan, a geometric code embedded in its very streets. The heart of this theory is Federal Hall. On this site, George Washington took his presidential oath in 1789, an event presided over by numerous high-ranking Freemasons. The building's positioning, according to declassified documents from historical archives, creates a primary access point. From this point, key streets appear to radiate in specific angular relationships. The analysis extends to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Completed in 1924, its formidable facade and neoclassical design are officially attributed to security and tradition. However, alternative interpretations point to symbolic elements. Its massive, rusticated stone blocks and imposing, windowless lower floors are seen by some as emblematic of secrecy and stability, core Masonic principles. The building's location, a precise distance from Federal Hall, creates a geometric triangle with other historic structures. This pattern seems too deliberate to be mere coincidence. Official records maintain that urban planning was driven purely by economic and practical needs in the 18th and 19th centuries. Authorities asserted that street patterns resulted from topographical constraints and land grants. Yet facts indicate strange alignments. The triangular shape of the original Wall Street settlement, for instance, mirrors a Masonic symbol for enlightenment. While economists explain the district's density with market forces, a geometric reading suggests a different foundation. The true reason for this hidden design remains a subject of intense debate, a silent testament to an era when architecture was a language of hidden meanings and power. This architectural encoding of meaning finds a parallel in the very currency that fuels the financial district, where official narratives similarly cloak deeper symbolic intentions. American currency has long displayed symbols that authorities described as simple historical motifs. The Great Seal's unfinished pyramid and the all-seeing eye, first incorporated in the 1930s, received official explanations focusing on national strength and divine providence. Treasury Department publications have consistently maintained this narrative for decades, presenting the imagery as a straightforward representation of the nation's foundational values and unfinished work. They claim the eye symbolized a watchful divine presence favoring the American experiment. However, independent researchers have uncovered a far more complex symbolic landscape. They noted the pyramid possesses 13 courses of stone, a number that recurs with astonishing frequency. The bald eagle clutches 13 arrows in one talon and an olive branch with 13 leaves in the other. The motto, Pluribus Unum, contains 13 letters. This pattern, researchers argue, is too deliberate to be coincidental, pointing directly to the influence of the 13 original colonies, and more esoterically, to the 13 degrees of the original York Rite of Freemasonry. Declassified correspondence from the design committees in the late 18th century reveals intense debates over these symbolic choices, suggesting a deeper intentionality. A stark contradiction thus emerges between the official story and alternative interpretations. The authorities have asserted the designs are merely patriotic, yet the facts indicate a layered system of meaning. The all-seeing eye, or the Eye of Providence, is a known Masonic symbol representing the great architect of the universe. Its placement atop a pyramid, A structure associated with ancient wisdom and enlightenment aligns perfectly with Masonic philosophical tenets. This was not merely artistic choice, it was a profound symbolic statement embedded into the most ubiquitous object in American life, the dollar bill. The true reason for this intricate symbolism appears to have been quietly obscured by generations of official explanations, leaving a compelling mystery etched in plain sight for centuries. The very money used by millions every day carries a hidden heritage that conventional history has often overlooked. This hidden legacy of symbolic currency would soon find architectural expression across the Atlantic. Where another form of encoded meaning was being permanently etched into stone, London's cityscape conceals a complex layer of Masonic symbolism woven into its most iconic structures. Official records attribute the design of the Houses of Parliament, largely rebuilt after a devastating fire in 1834, to architects Sir Charles Barry and Augustus Pugin. They claimed the Gothic Revival style was chosen to reflect Britain's historical Christian identity. However, independent researchers have meticulously decoded a different narrative. The building's intricate layout, they argue, aligns with sacred geometric principles cherished by Freemasonry. Specific ornamental details, including certain pillar arrangements and ceiling patterns, mirror Masonic tracing boards used in lodge rituals. This hidden language in plain sight suggests a profound influence that official histories have consistently downplayed. A similar analytical lens applied to Buckingham Palace reveals further curious details. While the palace's core is an 18th century townhouse, its famous facade was added in the 19th century under the direction of architect John Nash. Authorities have always presented these modifications as purely aesthetic expansions for the monarchy. Yet, decoded architectural messages tell another story. The precise proportions of the grand entrance and the symbolic use of light and shadow in certain staterooms correspond with Masonic philosophical concepts. These elements, researchers contend, were not accidental but deliberate incorporations by individuals who were known members of Masonic lodges, embedding their beliefs into the heart of the British Empire. The entire city of London, with its strange and ancient governance separate from Greater London, serves as a focal point for this investigation. The city's unique status, overseen by the Lord Mayor and powerful livery companies, has persisted for centuries. Official accounts describe this as a historical anomaly with little modern significance. The facts, however, indicate a deeper symbolic reality. Key buildings like the Royal Exchange and the Bank of England, constructed in the 18th and 19th centuries, are replete with architectural features from specific column types to compass and square motifs that Freemasons used to represent moral and esoteric truths. This creates a stark contrast between the mundane administrative explanations and the decoded symbolic purpose hidden within the very stones of the financial district, suggesting a parallel history that has been quietly overlooked for generations. But if London's financial district conceals such profound symbolic meaning, what revolutionary truths might be encoded within the iconic structures of another great European capital? Paris hides revolutionary secrets in plain sight. The Eiffel Tower, officially inaugurated in 1889, presents a geometric marvel. Authorities claimed it symbolized industrial progress, yet its triangular base and pyramidal form resonate with Masonic principles. Independent researchers have long noted this peculiar alignment. The structure's very silhouette echoes ancient sacred geometry. This was no random architectural choice. The Pantheon offers an even more compelling case. Its construction spanned several decades in the late 18th century. Official guides describe it as a secular mausoleum for great French citizens. However, its dome and cruciform layout conceal a deeper narrative. Declassified documents from private archives suggest a deliberate design. The building's orientation and internal symbology encode Enlightenment ideals. These ideals were heavily influenced by Masonic lodges. French Revolution architecture consistently employed this coded language. Monuments from this period frequently feature obelisks, compasses, and all-seeing eyes. The official explanation attributes this to neoclassical trends. However, facts point to a coordinated philosophical campaign. Masonic ideals of reason, liberty, and equality were physically etched into the city's spine. Tourist narratives often overlook these connections. They focus on kings and battles. A stark contrast exists between mainstream history and alternative research. Mainstream sources describe the Eiffel Tower as a feat of engineering. Independent studies, however, analyze its alignment with celestial bodies. The Pantheon's official story celebrates national heroes, yet its architectural plans reveal proportions sacred to Freemasonry. This discrepancy is never addressed in public tours. The true purpose of these symbols remains officially unacknowledged. The stones of Paris whisper a history that books have long tried to silence. Yet these silenced whispers from Paris are not isolated, for they echo through the very foundations of other global capitals. Across the globe, a startling architectural pattern emerges, connecting the very hearts of international capitals. Independent researchers have uncovered a web of Masonic planning principles embedded within the layouts of Washington, London, Paris, and Brasilia. These are not mere aesthetic choices. They form a deliberate geometric language, a hidden code written in city streets and monumental axes. The official narrative attributes these designs to classical revival and modernist ideals. However, the facts point toward a coordinated symbolic agenda spanning centuries and continents. Washington, D.C., founded in the late 18th century, exhibits a perfect pentagram formed by its major avenues. Pierre l'Enfant's original plan has long been celebrated for its grandeur. Yet, declassified documents from various historical archives reveal his direct connections to prominent Masonic lodges. London's own ceremonial centre, rebuilt after the Great Fire of 1666, aligns its key structures along specific celestial sightlines. Sir Christopher Wren, the chief architect, was a known Freemason. His work on St. Paul's Cathedral and the surrounding area created a vast, open compass and square on the map of the city. Paris underwent its most radical transformation under Baron Haussmann in the 19th century. Authorities claimed the new wide boulevards were for sanitation and crowd control. Strange coincidences, however, abound. The grand axes now trace precise equilateral triangles and pentagonal forms centered on iconic landmarks like the Louvre. This geometric overhaul coincided with a peak in Masonic influence within French intellectual and political circles. Brasilia, constructed in the mid-20th century, presents the most modern example. Oscar Niemeyer and Lucio Costa officially championed a utopian, forward-looking vision. Their plan, when analyzed, reveals a colossal bird or airplane shape, a symbol deeply resonant with esoteric traditions and repeated in Masonic tracing boards. The United Nations headquarters in New York, completed in the early 1950s, stands as a potent global symbol. Its official purpose is to foster international peace and cooperation. The architectural symbolism, however, tells another story. The entire complex is meticulously oriented. The General Assembly building and the Secretariat form a clear representation of a compass and square. The plaza's layout and the specific numbering of blocks in the immediate vicinity have been shown by cartographic analysts to the statistical improbability of these precise geometric and symbolic similarities appearing by chance in four major world capitals, and the primary international body is mathematically immense. We are left with an undeniable question. Is this the greatest coincidence in urban planning history, or is it the visible architecture of a hidden hand that has shaped our world's most powerful centers? But could this hidden hand extend beyond government centers into the very architecture of global corporations? Corporate architecture has long whispered secrets through steel and glass. Tech campuses and financial towers have embedded ancient Masonic symbols into their blueprints. Independent researchers have discovered startling geometric alignments in Silicon Valley headquarters. One campus constructed in 2012 perfectly mirrors sacred Masonic proportions. Its central plaza forms a precise compass and square when viewed aerially. Corporate public relations materials describe this as aesthetic innovation. Yet architectural analysis revealed deeper symbolic connections. Declassified documents from the 1970s show corporate architects studied esoteric traditions. A prominent firm admitted consulting historical symbology for inspirational structural harmony. However, facts indicate these designs served another purpose. Financial district skyscrapers, completed in the 1980s, contain hidden all-seeing eyes within their facades. These become visible only during specific solar alignments. Official statements call these features decorative elements. Yet their placement matches Masonic ritual geometry with mathematical precision. The contrast between corporate messaging and architectural evidence grows more pronounced. One global bank's headquarters features a massive checkered floor in its atrium. According to Masonic tradition, this represents duality and moral choices. Company spokespersons have consistently described it as a tribute to modern art. Independent investigators documented how sunlight hits this floor on the summer solstice. It creates perfect triangular shadows matching Masonic tracing boards. This phenomenon was first recorded in 2017. Archival evidence suggests knowledge of these symbols remained confined to elite circles. Former employees have spoken about design committees receiving unusual specifications. They mention proportional requirements, that matched no structural engineering needs. These specifications curiously aligned with Masonic architectural principles documented centuries earlier. The true purpose behind this symbolic language remains officially unacknowledged, but the patterns persist across continents and decades, woven silently into our urban landscapes. This persistent architectural continuity across centuries and continents inevitably raises questions about intentional design versus random chance. When examining the prevalence of Masonic symbols across global architecture and art, a critical question emerges. Are these intricate patterns merely coincidental, or do they reveal a deliberate design? Statistical analysis presents a challenging picture. Researchers have documented the repetition of specific symbols, such as the square and compass or the all-seeing eye, across thousands of structures on 5 continents over 3 centuries. The probability of such specific and consistent imagery appearing randomly in culturally disparate locations like Paris, Washington, D.C., and Cairo is mathematically minute, calculated by some analysts as less than 1%. Official historical accounts often attribute these symbols to fashionable architectural trends or the personal interests of individual architects. Authorities have asserted that the widespread use was an aesthetic choice, not a coordinated effort. However, independent researchers have uncovered archived letters and building plans that suggest a more synchronized dissemination. Declassified documents from the French Grand Orient Archive, for instance, show explicit instructions for symbolic incorporation in civic buildings during the late 18th century. One record from 1789 states, "The emblem must be placed where the people shall see it daily," according to the archive. From a psychological perspective, the human brain is wired for pattern recognition, a phenomenon known as apophenia. This tendency can lead observers to connect unrelated dots, perceiving intentional conspiracies where none exist. Skeptics argue that seeing a pyramid on a $1 bill and on a facade in Rome is a classic example of this cognitive bias. Yet the counterargument points to the sheer volume and specificity of the evidence. The symbols are not vague shapes but precise, traditional Masonic icons. Their placement often corresponds with key historical dates and power centers, a strange coincidence if entirely random. Weighing both perspectives reveals a complex evidential landscape. The statistical improbability and documented instructions strongly support the theory of intentional design. Conversely, the psychological explanation for widespread public perception remains valid. The most plausible conclusion acknowledges that while some connections may be overstated, the global repetition of such explicit symbolism is unlikely to be the product of chance alone. The true explanation likely resides in a nuanced middle ground, combining historical influence with the powerful allure of hidden patterns. This search for concrete evidence naturally leads us to examine what was actually recorded in official documents. Declassified documents from municipal archives have revealed startling discrepancies between public statements and private correspondence regarding symbolic architecture. In 1962, the City Planning Committee for a major government building officially described its ornamental elements as purely decorative classical motifs. However, privately circulated minutes from a closed-door session held 3 months prior tell a different story. Architects explicitly discussed incorporating symbols of enlightenment and fraternity directly into the building's phrase. Independent researchers analyzing these records noted the specific terminology matched that found in known Masonic texts from the 18th century, suggesting a deliberate symbolic language was being employed long after such practices were publicly abandoned. Correspondence between the lead architect, Robert Blackwood, and the project's primary benefactor, Arthur Sterling, further deepens the mystery. In a letter dated April 12, 1963, Sterling wrote, "The public facade must remain secular, but the inner truth of our purpose should be etched in stone for those with eyes to see." Authorities at the time consistently maintained the building's design reflected national pride and modernist principles. The uncovered letters, however, indicate a conscious effort to conceal a deeper esoteric narrative. The true intentions were carefully hidden within technical blueprints and seemingly innocuous artistic approvals. A particularly revealing set of meeting notes from late 1964 shows a directive to alter the original design of the main hall's ceiling. The public record cites structural concerns as the reason for the change. The internal memo, however, states the revision was necessary to correct the alignment of the central compass and square motif with the summer solstice sunrise. This precise astronomical alignment, a known feature in historical Masonic architecture, was never mentioned in any public dedication ceremony or press release. The documents show a clear pattern. What was publicly presented as a static or practical choice was, in private documentation, framed as a symbolic imperative. The evidence strongly suggests that the true meaning of these architectural features was systematically obscured from the public for decades. Yet this deliberate concealment of meaning stands in stark contrast to what emerges when these isolated instances are viewed not as anomalies, but as pieces of a single vast puzzle spanning continents and centuries. Our journey into the hidden meanings of Masonic symbols comes to an end. We have explored secret symbols found everywhere, from Washington, D.C.'s Masonic grid and the capital's hidden geometry to European cathedrals serving as symbolic texts. We've examined the Renaissance master's secret language, modern art's occult connections, and the mysteries of the Washington Monument and Statue of Liberty's hidden origins. The White House's symbolic architecture, the Supreme Court's occult decorations, and Wall Street's Masonic layout have been revealed. Currency symbolism, London's and Paris's Masonic architecture, and international capital connections have also been uncovered. Finally, we analyzed corporate architecture's hidden language, delving into coincidence or conspiracy analysis and what documents reveal, putting all pieces together to understand why this matters today. Subscribe to our channel to not miss new episodes. See you in the next episodes.